Hello, everybody. We are here again. Let's see what we have going on. I have a little render going on right now. And I was doing some tests in here, and I don't know how many renders you're doing right now, like if you're testing more stuff, but this is a good test to do. So check this thing out. Let me just move this away. So in your settings in here, right, like we were talking about before when I told you guys about, it's like a kind of like an optimal render speed would be like maybe like a 6.333. I'm actually using a little bit different here, like 8.222. So it's not super fast, kind of like on the slow side of things. But just to compare, look at this thing here. I don't know if you're going to be able to see. There's a lot of noise going on, right? It's pretty noisy in there compared to this. Look how clean it looks like. So I know it's a torture to wait for those renders because they can take forever, right? Like especially if you have a close-up like this. But it's important from time to time if you guys can do something, for example, like if you can set 10 for the first slider here, and then 3s for those other ones, you can get something that's very, very clean. And the reason why this is important is because you can be deceived by the noise. You know, like sometimes you get the very noisy surface like this, and then you think that your specular is diffuse. So for example, like you're gonna look at the specular and you're gonna feel like, okay, yeah, it's kind of diffuse in there, so I don't need to do much, right? But then you do a very fine render like this one, and then you see how glossy certain areas are, and you can have a perfect idea of how the surface is actually breaking, you know? So this one was pretty pale, so that's why this new render here is gonna look darker, the skin is gonna look darker, and actually it was a little waxy. So I actually reduced a little bit of the subsurface scattering. I'm gonna show you guys what's my new setting there if you wanna take a look. But yeah, it's very important because you can see like how glossy this is. Now I can actually have a perfect idea of how much less specular I should have for this guy. Because before I thought like, okay, yeah, it's kind of like, you know, it's like this one is a little on the noisy side of things as well. But you can see it's kind of, like I look at this area here, for example, it looks like, oh, it's kind of like a diffuse kind of speck, you know. But then when you do an actual render, and you see like with more resolution, right? Then you can tell that's actually kind of, it's almost like becoming a little plasticky in there. So that's a good measure. So from time to time, just do like a higher resolution render, like 10.333, something like that. And then you can have a better notion. I added some more color variation in here, but still painting, obviously, and it's very pale. So the last one I did was this one here, which is still rendering, but they're gonna just cancel it because we have class to go. And so I'm just gonna cancel this one for now. And so what we're going to be talking about today is going to be, oh, this one I forgot to mention that yesterday I did some work in this area right here, which was the blend between those little guys, right? Between the pores right here and then this area in here. So if you remember, like I had them going like all the way up here. So I basically like I just smooth them out. I start with go like to a lower resolution, like maybe 1, 2, 3 times. And then I start actually smoothing out and then all the way to the higher level. And then as I smooth out, I start like carving those wrinkles just to mix them with the rest of the stuff, you know. And then I added some of those kind of like lines right here going in different directions so it doesn't look like a perfect thing, you know. So I can see those guys here. I'm going to start adding more and more of this and more of like little pimples and things like that just to break up the surface. But at the end, I want to have like the pores reading mostly around this area here, and they're still gonna go down. They're a little bit still too deep here for my specific character. But yeah, gonna get there. Gonna start doing a lot of work on this guy over the weekend, probably starting tonight actually. So we're gonna be talking about hair today. And hair in Maya with XGen, if you have experience with it, because we have a lot of people with the different types of experiences here, different types of levels. If you're familiar with XGen, you probably are very aware how buggy it is. And I have this special relationship, like it's like, you know, it's like I love and I hate it at the same time. And I love it because of the features that XGen has. It's like it is quite amazing. It's like especially like the interactive stuff. Back in the day, they didn't have all this interactive stuff. It was more like you still have this module in there that you basically, like, you can paint masks, you can paint like maps and use expressions and things like that. It's a more complex, more robust kind of system. But they have this interactive version of it, which is exactly what it says. I mean, like, you can completely groom like entire set of hair in real time if you have like a decent computer. It doesn't need to be a super fast computer, but obviously the faster your computer, the faster you're gonna have the interaction. But I mean, you can see instead of like just seeing like hair guides, you can actually groom the entire thing, the actual hair, in real time in your monitor. So it's pretty cool. Uh, a couple of things I'm gonna mention beforehand is that there are certain brushes. I'm gonna show you here under XGen tab. So this brush here, that's the density brush. I would say that this is the most buggy of all of them. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you paint something, doesn't show, then you do a little rebuild in your hairs, and then all of a sudden it shows up. It's like, it's very, very buggy. So I'm kind of like trying to find ways to avoid using it. And the thing is, like, the way that I have this model set up, it's actually, I have multiple UDIMs, right? I have like 5 UDIMs. And then painting maps in XGen, it doesn't support multiple UDIMs. You have to have a single UDIM to paint maps in it, right? So obviously you can actually groom everything like I always did with those other portraits you saw. It's all groomed right here on top of the main character, right? Like the main mesh. So I don't create like a separate scalp or anything like that. And I groom everything. I always find a way to actually groom. If it's not working with the guides and the guides are starting to crash stuff, I actually groom by hand. And I found more artistic, because it's kind of like you can actually select stuff and just select certain areas, isolate them, and then groom. But I'm gonna start probably with some curves in here, hoping that's not gonna crash straight away. And then if it starts acting a little funny, we're gonna go to the simplest stuff, because my intention is to actually cover stuff like the nostril hair and also the peach fuzz. And the peach fuzz, to me, is very important, not because of that little effect that it gives. It's like when you look from a glancing angle, right? You're gonna see that little almost like velvety kind of surface, but also because you can use the peach fuzz for blending stuff, right? So for example, like if you look at a picture like this one here, you see, for example, like she has the actual hair, or he has the actual hair in there, but then you have all this peach fuzz around here. That's the vellus, right? That's how you call it. It's written like this, Vellus. So that's the name for the peach fuzz. So you have the peach fuzz right here, and it starts very small, and then as it gets closer and closer to the hair, it becomes longer and longer, right? But the thickness it's kind of the same. It's like it stays very thin, and it just helps to blend the hair with the scalp in a nicer way. So if we actually add peach fuzz in the entire head, you can actually use a brush like my favorite brushes in here from XGen are the length brush and the thickness brush, right? So you can actually do this one here. Let's see, oh, it's resting in there. It's not showing the name. Let's see if he's gonna show. Yeah, the width brush, and the other one is this one here. That's the length brush, and then there's the cut. That's this one here. So those 3 brushes are the ones I'm gonna use the most here, and also of course like this one here. That's the comb brush that I'm gonna be just using to style a lot of stuff. There's this one here I use a lot too. That's the freeze tool. That means you can actually isolate certain areas you don't want to move or style, and then you just basically like lock them into place. And then it's very useful as well because you can actually reverse the effect, and you can either sculpt just what's basically like what's not frozen, and then you can switch and sculpt just inside of the frozen areas as well. So it's very, very useful. So for now, let's just do this. Let's start fresh. We're gonna just isolate this, guys, just the head, right? And then I'm gonna leave up to you guys if you want to do this. I'm gonna be doing some tests over the weekend and see if it's a better way to do it. But I'm gonna be adding the hair in this guy here the way it is. So basically like our main head or base mesh, because that's the way I normally do. But I heard that's a good idea to actually, if you can duplicate this and then create a new set of UVs, just like a single UDIM. So I can actually experiment with some like painting some density maps instead of like using the density tool here to just like brush them out. And then at the risk of like having all kinds of problems, I'm gonna try to you know, like paint some density you know, maps instead. The cool thing about that is that if I duplicate the entire head, I can actually bring the mesh from ZBrush every time I do like a major change, right? And just use the blend shape and just basically like grow it again. So basically I would have to do in 2 steps. I would have to adapt the skin to conform to the new mesh, and also the new base mesh just for the hair would have to do this as well. And that one I'm gonna make like a non-renderable mesh, right? Or you can just hide on at render time. You can do that as well. But for now, we're gonna just use this mesh the way it is. And the thing that's gonna be funny here is that my reference, it's a very old guy, right? With this very weird, fucked up eyebrows. So that's gonna be a tricky one to actually try to do an example of a normal eyebrow. So I think I'm gonna try to start with like a regular kind of eyebrow, so you guys can have an idea about like how I would approach if you're sculpting someone more like on the young side, right? But then all this stuff here, the way I normally approach this, it's either like I add another description and just like add those flyaways and weird stuff like that, those long ones, as a different description, or I just select like pinpoint some of those, and then with I grow a little bit the thickness of it and the length of it, and then I just style one by one. Basically, like you can mask one hair, and then you can just say, okay, I'm gonna sculpt just inside of this mask, right? Just inside of the frozen stuff. So I can actually pull and do some of that kind of like random stuff, right? The way I did for this guy here. So he doesn't have a lot of it, but you're gonna see a few of them. Let's see if I get a, yeah, I think this one you can actually see. Oh, it's a little blurry in there. But some of those guys here, around there, those guys I actually got a little bit of that. You know, it's like there's one crossing here as well. Just like I picked a few of them and just like start styling just one by one. So, but for now, I'm just gonna try to see if I don't get a crash here. So I'm just gonna move to the side. I'm gonna have to try to find out kind of like an average position for them. Normally when I paint a mask to create my hair in there, I'm just gonna start with a new camera actually. So I have everything locked and fresh. And let me just switch to 85 millimeters. Oh, is it? No, that's not angle of view. It's the, that's my focal length. It's 85. So the first thing I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna make everything symmetrical when it comes like to the selection. So if I wanna select some faces, for example, I'm gonna just right click and just say face, right? And then now it's not symmetrical. And you see the size of my brush, you can press B and then scroll, like just like drag your mouse side to side, and then you can actually grow or shrink it. So I'm gonna keep it smaller. And then you see symmetry in here. This is my 2019. 18 is the same. I don't remember if 17 was the same, but symmetry is in here. So I can just click and say topology. And then it's gonna give you this little cursor in there, and you have to pick like an edge right in the middle. So Maya can establish the mirror based on the topology, right? So now it says like ray face, that's the name of my mesh, right? And then if I select something here, it should be based on the topology. So it should be a precise kind of selection. So when I'm doing this kind of stuff, like the painting stuff, like eyebrows, for example, I normally create a bigger area than what I see, because I always want to have a little bit of a buffer, you know, because there are a couple of ways you can do stuff, right? You can actually add hair to the entire face and then use masks to just like eliminate everything, just keep that one, that little area. But the way I do, like for each one of the iterations, descriptions I create, I normally just paint a little mask. For example, if I have a mustache, you're gonna paint a mask just for the mustache area, create a little description, and then move to the next one. Do the same for nostrils and everything. But the way I paint is normally like if I see the eyebrows in my reference looking just this size here, I go further. For example, like I expand it and I go a little bit bigger in radius, because I want to make sure I have some blenders as well, you know, so that I can use if I want to, and stuff that I can actually eliminate. And basically how I'm doing these days, instead of like using the density brush like I used in the past, that would fuck up everything, right? You would just basically like it would make certain things explode, like the hair would look weird and sometimes would crash and stuff. So instead of that, I just whatever I don't need, if I have like too much hair around those areas here, I transform them into peach fuzz. Basically, I just like shrink them to a very tiny, small size, and then I just make them very, very thin. And then it's actually pretty good because you can actually play with that and help to use them as blenders, you know. So if I have the eyes, the eyebrows in here, you see like I made it like very big, but when I'm styling it, I'm gonna start like I said, like I'm gonna paint some of them a little smaller, just to create like blenders. So let's see. I think like for his face, I think this is like big enough. It's like way too big actually, but it's good. So the way I approach XGen in Maya is basically like you have like those presets here for the workspace, and this one here, this last one of the second session is this section is this XGen interactive groom. So if you click that one, you're gonna get a 3-tab system like this one. So you have your outliner, the channel box, and then you have your XGen. And this is where we're gonna create our descriptions, right? So I'm gonna start with this. I'm gonna just add, go to create, and you're gonna say interactive groom splines. And it's gonna open a little, you know, interface in here, and you can just say like eyebrows, for example, or any name you wanna add in there. And then you have the density, and the density is gonna describe the approximated number of hairs, right? So at this point here, I have 259 hairs. If you do a little Google research, I took some notes in here. For example, I took notes about like the from the other scene I have from Stan Winston, like the thickness for the hairs, and then for the amount of hairs that we have. For example, for the entire scalp, if it's not someone bald, obviously, the entire scalp would have something around between 90,000 and 150,000 hairs, like follicles, right? In a normal hair with the, you know. And then eyelashes, you would have about 420. So it's normally like double at the top than you have like at the bottom, right? So for example, like if I have 420, it would be like, let's say like 210 altogether, right? So we probably would have, yeah, I have to do a little calculation to find out like the number, but I had that pretty much locked on my other model, but I can look at that later. We're not gonna be doing this today. But for the eyebrows, they say that like an average would be like 500 basically hairs for the eyebrows. Each one would be like 250. But they're considering, for example, like when you look for this information, sometimes it's like websites that use like products of beauty and stuff for women, right? And then it's a little tricky because like they pluck their hair a lot, so it's like it's not like a number that you should trust too much. But if you look around the internet, you're gonna find other amounts, you know. It's like, so the variation would be like all the way like from 500 to 1100 hairs in both eyebrows. So I would consider like between 250 and 550 for both eyebrows, for each one of the eyebrows. So because I have this area that's bigger than what I need, and basically like I would be treating just like the inner part in here as the one that actually shows the eyebrows, I'm gonna exaggerate this number here. So let's see how much I get. So this number here is actually for both eyebrows, right? So if I set like 1100 for both, that's the high number, right? So between like 500 and 1100, I'm gonna crank a little bit higher here. I'm gonna do like let's say like 15 or 6, let's do 1600. Around that, doesn't need to be precise, but something around there. And then for the length, I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to guess in here, but I'm gonna keep it at 0.1. And then for the width, I think like what I use for the other character, for Dick Smith or for Stan Winston, was 0.014. And the ballpark was gonna be, oh, actually I can tweak this number later because it makes a difference. So like the thickness is going to be always like around 0.01 for everything, and then it can be like 0.012, 14, 16. I don't think I go further than 17. So it would be like this would be the max. And then for the CV count, basically like is the number of points in the curves you're gonna have. So if you have like long hair, obviously, if you have like a female, right, like you with long hair, you would probably like use a very high number, like 200, 300 CV counts. Or if it's peach fuzz, you can get away with using like 8 like this, or even less than that. Probably like 8 would be a good one because you can add a little bit of a curvature to it without looking artificial. But for the eyebrows, if I want something that's flexible, and I would not use less than 32, right? So 32 to, let's say, 64. I like using multiples of 8 for some reason. But just so I go ahead against myself here, I can use like, let's say like 50. So let's try that and let's see what we get from straight away. So I apply it. It's very, very small, right? Let's just undo this. I'm gonna undo it. And let's do it again. So let's see, that value was pretty small. Let's create it again. All the stuff I just set, it should be repeated in here, so it's easy to just go back. And from 0.1, I guess I'm gonna go with 1. So let's try that. That's more like it. It's still kind of long, but it's more like it. So from this point here, so now I have the hairs in place, right? Like, and it just populated in this selection that I had. And now I have my eyebrows description in here. And just looking at the anatomy of the way that the XGen works, is basically like everything is in layers, right? So by default, just by creating this one here, it creates this base, which it has a couple of interesting things here. It has the scale that starts with 1, but you can actually play with it, right? You can, it's like mix shorter or longer just by using the scale. So I'm gonna keep at 1 for now. You have the base in here, which is very important. I mean, like this one here, you can actually increase the density, right? You can add more or less, or, hair like that. You can paint masks as well, but again, to paint a mask, you would have to have like a single UDIM, right? Otherwise, it's not gonna work. And this is an important one here. Sometimes like when you play and you're styling stuff for a long time in XGen, it tends to mess up with the hair. And then I keep rebuilding it. Like every couple of minutes, it's like when I do some work around the grooming, I keep like rebuilding just to make sure that everything is in place. So at this point here, I could, for example, like style everything by hand, right? I could click this little guy here. That's the comb brush. And then in this tab here, you have the attributes, but then you have this tool settings, right? So if you click the tool settings, that's the place where you're gonna basically like, it's like put all the settings for that kind of stuff, So you're gonna have your symmetry in here. You can turn on or off. You have by object or world. You have the frozen effect as well, so you can actually use a frozen effect. Seems like my density went a little funky in there for some reason. Did I? Oh, it's because of this. Okay. So that's what I need, density. And then here, I mean, like there's the collide with meshes. I don't use this one this much because I'm gonna show you what it does. So you see, like this collide with meshes is supposed to prevent the hair to penetrate into the surface. But you get those weird artifacts. So you have this distance here, right? That's 300. So with 300, basically that's what you get around here. So if you look really closely, you're gonna see that the hair goes out straight and then it starts bending, right? So if I go back and I do it again, let's try with a very little distance like that, 0.01. It's much closer to the surface now, but you still, if you look closely, you're gonna see the little things sticking like that, right? So it still get a little bit of a line before it starts bending. So what I do normally, I just turn it off, and I'm just careful about like not intersecting. Control Y. About not intersecting, so I turn it off, and then I try to do from angles, for example, from here, if I'm styling something. I just do like from a good angle that I can actually see if it's penetrating or not. I can go inside of the mesh and see if I'm penetrating there or not, right? If you do carefully, I mean, like there's it's a lot more control, and you get what you need. You know, it's like you don't get this funkiness at the roots, and then you can actually really, you know, tweak things and, you know, go to town with that. So that's basically like the basis of the way this works. But let's take a look further now at about these modifiers, for example. Before you do any additional steps here, I just did a quick grooming just to show you guys. But for example, like you see, like we have this stack here of modifiers, right? And you have your sculpting here. And you notice that every time you create a new description, it turns this edit button on for you. And this is very important to pay attention, because if you have already a lot of descriptions created in here, for example, one for eyebrows, another one for eyelashes, another one for the peach fuzz, you know, it's like nostril hair and stuff like that. At the end of the day, if you want to tweak one of them and start like, okay, the eyebrows need some, the nostril hair needs more work now. If you forget to click edit under that node, sometimes you get some weird results, you know. Or either it doesn't do anything, because obviously if it's not on, it's not going to do it, or it's going to try to actually style something that's not part of that the group in there. It's more like, for example, right here, and then you're going to start getting some funky results. So every time you want to sculpt something, for example, like if I want to switch to another description, make sure that you expand the description, like basically like look at this box, expand it, and then click this edit button at every time you're going to sculpt on that specific node. So this one is just for the eyebrows, right? So the modifiers here are pretty cool. But let's just add some curves in here, which is always risky process, because curves can crash your Maya for no reason. So I'm gonna just save before I do anything else. And I think like if you just do like a simple kind of curve setup in here, I'm gonna just add a few of them. I think Maya is gonna be kinder, is not gonna crash on me. But I'm gonna just select this top node in here. I'm gonna just add a modifier, and I'm gonna say guide. Okay, so now I have this guide modifier here, but I don't have anything in there just yet. So if I go and I click guide and I go to attribute editor, you're gonna notice that there is this button in here that says create. So I'm gonna click that one first. So we added a bunch of like little lines in there, those yellow lines, right? But I wanna make sure that I have just like the ones I want. So I'm gonna do something very risky here, which is I'm gonna paint the density of those guys. You're gonna remove a couple of them and hope for the best. So you're gonna notice one thing when you have the guide, as soon as you click create in here, now this becomes a subsystem. So this is inside of eyebrows, but if you expand it, you're gonna see there's another description inside of it. And then inside of this one, you have all the same structure that you have outside. So you have a sculpting node and you have your edit right there, right? So if you click the edit in here, now you actually can sculpt those lines, those little yellow lines instead, right? So if I move them, they move a bunch of hair at the same time because they're influencing all the hair, right? So it's pretty cool that you can do that. But at this point here, the risky thing I'm gonna try to do, I'm gonna try to use this guy here, which is the density. And I'm gonna try to eliminate some of that. Just gonna paint them out. And I'm gonna tell you why soon. I'm gonna keep just like maybe one in there, because sometimes when I eliminate all of them, and that's all the little traps that the XGen has. Sometimes when I eliminate all of them, it bugs out and then it doesn't allow you to add more again. And it's just like, just to try to prevent some problems in here. So I'm gonna just keep those 2 ones in there just as a reference. And then there's this little brush here that says, if I click on it, so this one here says, come on, place tool, right? So this one you can actually place stuff by hand. So it's kind of like you add hairs by hand. You can use that for regular hair. For example, if you want to just like fill up an area that doesn't have enough hair, or you can do that for the guides as well. So I'm gonna use that for the guides in this case here. I'm gonna start from this outer area, and I have my symmetry on, as you can tell, right? It's going both ways. And I'm gonna try to add one of them here, right? And then I'm gonna add another one right in the middle, right here. Another one right here. And another one right there. Okay, now I'm gonna try to eliminate this guy here. See, like it's a little bit of a hack job, right? Because I'm trying to prevent crashes. So now I remove that one that was holding everything in place, and I'm just gonna create another one around here. And then I'm gonna do the same for the bottom part. So I'm gonna do one here, one around there, then one here, one here, and one here. So now we have 10 little hairs in there, right? So 5 in each side. So the cool thing about this is that now we can actually split, because the pattern of the eyebrows, the way they grow, it's very similar, right? We're gonna deal with this inner part later because we can actually brush them back. But I'm gonna start by masking things. So I'm gonna click this freeze tool here. I'm gonna click on it, and I'm gonna freeze everything. You can use Control if you don't have the selection working for you. It's because it's inverted. So if it's not working, just press Control, then it should work. So now that's locked, right? And now basically what's gonna do, those ones gonna be held in place, and I can just style the top ones. So I can click on my comb brush, and I can just do this. I'm gonna go towards the bottom part, right? So I'm gonna go this direction. And you see, like, it looks a little funky in there because it's actually preserving the bottom ones in place. So it's not doing anything, it's not interpolating. And I'm just gonna move them towards this direction. And I can even, from below, just make sure that they are kind of like closer to the skin, right? And then obviously you can tweak later, but just to get, it's a little bit closer than what I have. Let's do that here. And now I have them all going in that direction, right? Can actually add a little bit of a curvature. And let's pretend we are happy with it, which we are not, but we're gonna pretend we are. And we're gonna just like paint everything. You're gonna mask it, and now we're gonna mask the bottom ones. Now I can actually use that again, and I'm gonna go up this time around. And again, going to go from the below in here, gonna just brush it. Make sure you have a nice little curvature in there that's like, it doesn't go up too much. So you see, like, I have like a large area because, like I said, I added that entire buffer area, right? But we're gonna deal with that by transforming the leftover stuff into peach fuzz in this case here. But again, if you are going for that route of it's like creating another UV set, or creating a duplicate version of this mesh here just for the sake of painting masks and stuff, then in that case you would not need to worry about this, because you could simply like paint a density map, and then you would completely eliminate the hairs from this area, right? But in our case here, we're gonna actually use them to our benefit, just like make like blenders. So now, let's say like I said, like this doesn't look anything like my reference, right? Because this guy here, it's that kind of like old man eyebrows, right? It's pretty messed up, like that. So, but I can see a little bit of the hair in there. So I'm gonna try to make a little bit closer to that. And obviously, in your case, in there, if you're doing this like for a younger person, you're gonna start with something like that, and then you're gonna have to style to match whatever direction you have, right? So for example, if the hairs around this area here, sometimes they start going towards the center and they get more straight up. So we can deal with that later. I'm gonna do this with another layer later. But those ones are based like it's a blocked version of the eyebrows, right? It has a little peak at the top that we can actually make it a little bit softer later by adding another layer. But that's basically like, it's like the basis of an eyebrow, for example, right? It's not styled yet. You still have a lot of work to do, but it's a good start. So you're just gonna basically like, I can actually, no, I'm not gonna freeze them. Actually, I can freeze them. So let's freeze those guys just so they don't move, and they're gonna be holding the hair in place. And so now you saw that I have this as a subsystem inside of my system, right? So it has its own set of modifiers. You can add anything here. You can add like, curve, clump, collision, cut, all those things that you do for the regular hair, you can actually style this pseudo hair that's basically the guides, right? The guides become hair as well, but they actually influence all the other hair. Even the thickness, if you want to play with it, for example, like you see, I have them like the yellow like that, and they're super thick. You can actually make them a little bit thinner like that, you know, so they look like, or thicker, right? So they behave like actual hair, but they're just like guides. They're not gonna render, right? So I'm gonna do the masking again. And now, instead of like working in this subsystem that's the guides, right? I'm gonna go back to the main subsystem, to the main system that's the eyebrows. So I'm gonna basically like, you see like I have edit turned on for the subsystem, which is the guide. I'm gonna go to the sculpt. I'm gonna click edit. So now if I sculpt it, I should sculpt actually the hair and not the guides. So it's not gonna do anything because it's locked, right? Like this one is actually overriding the whole thing. But what you can do, you can actually add another sculpt modifier on top of it. So if I go to eyebrow here and I can just say modifier, and you can say create another sculpt. So now I have a sculpt on top of my stack here, right? So the guide now is secondary, and this guy here now has the edit in there. So if I try to edit now, let's see what happens. So now I'm actually back overriding that action which was created by the, you know, it's like the guides are locking everything in place, everything that's under the guides, but everything that's over here, I'm actually influencing now, right? So if I do something like that, you also have those sliders here. You can blend between, you know, it's like the different styles using that slider, which is very, very cool. So it's very powerful. When it doesn't crash or it doesn't give you crap, it's incredible. I really love XGen, you know. But the bugs actually really destroy the experience a lot of times. So now that we have this one set up, so it's the top layer in there, I'm going to start actually doing some work with making them into actually turning them into peach fuzz, right? So we're going to go to this guy here, which is the width tool, right? And I'm going to go right here, where it says like tool settings. And then I have like the size, I have the length, and there is some very interesting stuff here, which is the minimum length, minimum width, that if it's at 1, for example, that means it's not gonna change. So if I just do this, actually if I go lower, it doesn't go lower than what I have set in there. So basically like 1 is the minimum. And the increment is every time is like 1 by 1, right? So it's like it multiplies. So I'm gonna make it symmetrical in here, world X. And then I'm gonna turn my minimum width to something much smaller than that. So let's say if my eyebrows, I have took note here, the eyebrows I have 0.014 for the thickness of them. So if I go to the right here, let's click. Oops, go up. If I click eyebrows, you're gonna see here is 0.14, right? That's the number I have in there. So I want something that is for my peach fuzz 0.04. So basically like one third of that. So let's say if I want that, let's just go back here. So I have this one selected. So my sculpt, and then let's go to the thickness again. And then if I want like 1/3 of that, I can actually use that here. For example, like the minimum width, I'm gonna, instead of 1, it's gonna be like a 0.3. Right, so that's gonna be it. So that's basically like 1/3 of the thickness of this. So if I press Control now and I go lower, right? So it starts like to fade into those very thin hairs now. So I get like very thin hair in there, but they're still pretty long, right? They're just like getting thinner. And let's make sure here that my my viewport is actually has anti-alias. Which should be, let's see if I have it, anti-alias. No, I don't. So let's turn it on. So we have a nicer iteration in there. So let's select, that's good. So now you can see the little hairs in there. If I click like just press the button here without the control, it's gonna grow it, right? This increment. Or if I press Control, then it's gonna just like make thinner. So very interactively, you can actually paint this entire thing and create the area that you want. And then at any time, you can actually recover that. You can actually go, okay, so if I had 0.3, that's gonna be my new 1, right? So you're gonna increase another like 30%, and you're gonna go back to a very similar thickness that you had before. So I'm gonna just do this. I'm gonna blend some of them. And now with that blend, maybe let's see, he has very little hair in his eyebrows. I'm actually doing this very thick eyebrows here to help you guys out to visualize what a normal eyebrow would be, because it doesn't have a lot of purpose for my character here, because it's yeah, he has very little hair in there. So now I have this blend, right? And it looks nice, but the length is still pretty long. So I can actually go to this other brush here, which is the length tool. I'm gonna click that one. And then I have the increment here is negatives. So you can see like it's minus 0.277. And then I have a minimum length in there. So let's see how far it goes with the minimum length. It goes very, very tiny. See, it's like, yeah, it's way too tiny. So although I want to do like peach fuzz for a lot of this stuff here, I'm gonna see, actually I'm gonna go for this very external ones here. I can go as far as, yeah, turn into a complete peach fuzz in here. Let's do that. So let's do, you know, it's like just select a couple of those and let them turn into very thin little things, because at the end of the day, the entire face is gonna be covered in the hair. So what I'm doing here, this stuff here is not gonna even make a huge difference, you know, if I have a tiny little pieces of hair in there. And also we're gonna be controlling the color of those hairs with a map later on. And I use a single map to control all the hairs in the entire face. And basically like it controls the color of the melanin of the hair. So either it's like blacker or a little bit more on the blonde side, right? Like blonde or white. So I'm just gonna, instead of like deleting, obviously if you wanna go for something like a minimum length, if you put like a 0 here or 0.1, they're gonna completely almost like disappear, right? They kind of go away for good. So you can do that as well. But I'd rather have something that blends, you know. And also at any time, if I feel like, okay, some of them can go longer again, you can just go back to your length here. And instead of like the increment at minus 0.77, can do a little bit of a positive, or you can use control to reverse it as well. And then you can actually grow them back, right? So you have all this control and it's super interactive. It's actually very nice to use. And then, so let's get the thickness in here again. I'm gonna just shrink those guys a little bit. And you see like it's shrinking like straight away. It's going all the way to super thin. But you can actually do that in very little increments as well. For example, like if you want to control it, the increment here is like pretty long, pretty big. But if I put like 0 point something like that, 0.090, I can actually go here. And now I can control how thin I want to go, like much slower, you know. For example, like a couple of clicks right there. And you kind of like, some are a little thicker, some are a little, you know, like thinner. And so let's say like this is something that's working, right? So for example, like I can add a couple of different layers now for my controllers in here. So I have this sculpt layer here that does this. If I turn it off, right, it basically like this one is controlling just the thickness and the size of those little peach fuzz there, right? So this one here is the sculpt layer, and then this one here is the one that controls basically like the position and the style of the guides themselves, right? And this one here probably is not going to do anything because I didn't change anything. I didn't sculpt inside of that layer. So basically like those layers are the ones controlling things here. And now I can add another sculpt. You can add as many as you want. I can add another sculpt layer in here on top of this, just to control, let's see, sculpt, just control that inner part that I was talking about right there. So now you see like the edit switched back to this one. You can actually even name this. You can do like brows blenders or something like that. Right? You can name them if you want. This one's gonna be like inner brows, something like that. And then you can actually style them. So I can actually get this one and then start like, for example, like, let's see if I can get something going up. Actually, I think a better idea is to actually make them smaller first, right here in this area. So I'm gonna make them smaller. So let's do like that. And let's go very slowly when I do that. Get those guys to get a little smaller. Being very slow with them. And then now I can actually try to brush them out a little bit. I could actually use some different curves in there as well. You know, it's like add curves just for that area specifically. But I'm gonna just pull them out so you can see that you can actually do that way too. So I can actually freeze stuff if I don't wanna mess up too much, but I'm just gonna grab a couple of those here and try to pull carefully. This direction here first. So I can actually just isolate them. It'll be a little messy, I guess. I think if I did let me just isolate them first. Let's do a freeze here. It's easier for me to just control. Let's freeze a couple of them around here. Let's see. Yeah, something like that. So I freeze the entire thing in there. Freeze the entire thing here. Just keep a couple of them around that area. Oh, if those big ones here are actually bothering you, the guide ones, you can actually hide them like that. You see, like you can hide them completely. So they are there holding stuff in place, but they're not doing anything at this point. So now I have control of those ones, right? Because now I can use the comb brush, but I can use like the frozen effect, right? So like I said before, you can invert it. If you click this button here, this checkbox, you're going to sculpt inside of it. If you don't, then you're going to sculpt outside. So now I can just pull those guys out. Even got some on the top in there, it's fine. And now I can start like carefully just adding some direction and making it a little bit more random as well. At any time you can actually just isolate a couple of them as well. But here I'm just gonna try to get, let me use my tablet, right? It's better if I use a tablet sometimes, that's Cintiq. So like trying to control everything with the mouse. And I can make my brush a little bit smaller too. Just like, you know, get some of those guys to blend with the rest of the eyebrow. And then when you get here, kind of like change direction slightly. It's very symmetrical right now. I can actually break the symmetry as well and deal with that. But you get the idea here. And then you can actually add more hair just to fill up any gaps you have. But it's, you know, it's like it's doing like very roughly here so you can see. But there are many ways you can do that. I mean, like you could potentially add more curves in there and just control them very carefully. Or you can just style like that, you know, it's like in just like from time to time, you just like freeze it again. For example, keep a couple of them in place. Oops, those guys, for example, and do another pass with the smaller, you know, it's like just get some of the other stuff in place. And this is like, it's great to use this comb brush because you can create like all those types of curvatures, you know, just by pulling it. And if you select just a few of them, you can actually have a ton of control as well. But yeah, so this one doesn't look that great, but it's kind of like for you to get an idea. So obviously you can, you know, use curves or whatever you need to use, but it's kind of like just to mess up a little bit in there. So now that we have something like that, let's say, let's pretend again that we are happy, which I'm not. And then I'm just gonna go here and then start adding the fun stuff because the eyebrows, they look okayish when you do like any type of grooming like that, but they don't look much realistic before you add some modifiers in here. So another one we're gonna add on top of this entire thing is gonna be the noise brush, the noise modifier. And I use noise for everything. So for anything, any type of hair, you know, so it can be nose hair, peach fuzz, doesn't matter. I always use some noise because it really adds a lot to it. So the way you control the noise here, you're gonna see under the attribute editor. By default here, there's this noise, and the magnitude is pretty high, and the frequency is it's kind of high as well. So like it's 1, right? If you keep increasing like the frequency, you're gonna get more like it's craggly like that, right? And then you have this modifier here that's the preserve length. So you see like it tries to preserve the length and just like really make them curly, right? So you can control like that. the magnitude here is going to make them more and more spread out, right? It goes from this to this. And then the correlation here tries to, you know, to preserve. If you go all the way up, you're going to see it. It tries to preserve that correlation between them, right? But then I normally don't use that much. Another thing that I use here, for example, like if you go back to your eyebrows, the main shape here, you see like we have like 0.14. Let's go back to the noise here and just like make it a little bit more normal like that. But you see like I have 0.14 for the scale, right? For the width, which is like the thickness of the hair, right? And it's respecting the pass I did to transform everything else into peach fuzz already. So it's all baked in there, it's fine. But let's look at what this does, like, because this is going to be the same type of transforms and settings you're going to have for each type of hair you have across the entire face. So one thing you can always use, and I say always, depending on the type of the hair, obviously. But imagine this, for example, if I have a trimmed hair, for example, like a beard, right? You want to make sure that the beard, if it's a trimmed beard, you're going to have the ends of the hair squarish like that, right? Because it was just trimmed. But if it's a hair that's just like growing and growing, for example, peach fuzz, right? That keeps growing, but you never trim it, unless obviously, like if there's a macro photography or something underneath your beard that you just shaved, you're going to have like the little shaved peach fuzz as well. But I'm saying like in general, when you look at the peach fuzz in the nose and the side of the face, places where you're never going to shave, you're probably going to get like very pointy tips instead of like something that's square like that, because there's no blade cutting them. So if you can use the tapering here to taper the hair. Look, it does this kind of effect, you know. It's like it creates this very thin tips, and it can help to add some natural look to it, right? So we can control with that. So you add a little bit of a tapering, for example, just so it's not like a square tip. But also you can control using a curve in here. So I'm gonna click this little dot, and I'm just gonna go to spline. And then one thing that I normally do, and I know this is not right, because like in real life, you're probably gonna start with a thicker hair at the root, and then it's gonna get smaller as you go towards the tips. But I make them thinner slightly at the tips, so it creates a better blend with the skin. So I'm gonna do this. So you see, like I'm controlling just the base, like the roots in here, right? And then I'm gonna click, and I'm gonna create another one. I'm gonna make it thicker from that point on until here. And then I'm gonna bring this one, the tip itself, down, and then I'm gonna create another one. So I normally create a curve like that. And then I can control, for example, this is the tip right here, right? So I can go thicker or thinner. And the fall off I can actually control by just moving this one, right? Like that. And then this one here controls the root. So basically I could go thicker or thinner as well. And then this is the fall off until it becomes thick again, right? So I'm gonna do something like that. So this one you can actually use just by itself if you want, and you don't need to use the taper. The taper can add a little extra, you know, so I'm gonna use both of them. The taper just a little bit, but this one adds, it becomes a little bit more natural, right? So the more you add those types of modifiers and stuff, the more you're gonna see like the results becoming more and more natural in the look, until you get something that you actually like, you know. So a couple of other things about those is that, for example, like in the viewport here is showing everything kind of flat. So if I click tube shade, see there's a difference now. It shows with a little bit of a little bit more thickness, right? So between this and this, so there's a little bit more of a shadow in there. And then there's another thing that's the render time for Arnold. By default, it renders everything as ribbons. So basically, every single hair is just a little flat surface, right? So if you can go all the way down here, and if you click Arnold, then you're gonna notice that you have this setting here that says ribbon. You can switch to thick. That render time, it should add some thickness to the hair. And if you want to make, like by any chance, like make the hair transparent. And then you want to make sure, like, which is completely overkill, obviously. But if you want the shadow of those little hairs to be transparent as well, if you make them slightly translucent, then you would have to turn off the opaque in here. But that's not the case. We're not going to make that. It takes longer to render and all that stuff, right? And then now let's say like, okay, let's pretend you guys are done with your eyebrows. Which let's do a little bit more exploration here. I just started with the noise, but I mean, like the noise, the way it works here, if I crank the magnitude, right, you're gonna see like that. Again, you can control everything with a curve. So if I click spline, now this is the root, right? So if I click this one, I would not mess up with the root too much, because sometimes it gets one of those little guys that moves away from the original positions too much. And it creates this artifact. You see like a square kind of angle in there, like this. So I'm gonna try to keep it in place. But then if I go more towards the, you see like they are little tubes now instead of like little flat ribbons. But if I go more towards the ends now, then this has a full-on noise, right? So I can start the noise using the curvature here. So again, like I can expand this one and just, for example, like, okay, this is gonna be locked at the root, but then right after that, I want to start like some kind of noise, right? And then increase a little bit more around here. And maybe for whatever reason, I need the tips to go straight again. Then you can do something like that, and they should not have noise at the very end, right? So you can do like everything with curves like that. So you get some interesting results. And then obviously the magnitude is too high here, so I'm gonna bring back. But one thing I'm gonna say, for example, like you see something like that, and then let's say if you have something like this, right? It looks kind of natural because it has a little bit of a wobble in it. But let's say like you render this, and in the renders, every time I try, if I see something like that that looks just right, whether I render looks too straight. So I normally crank more than what I'm seeing here. So for example, like if I do something like that, it's more likely it's gonna render more correctly to look more like a natural eyebrow than something that looks too straight away like that. For some reason, at least like visually for me, every time I try something, it becomes more, yeah. So I think you guys got the gist of this thing here. For example, like I can keep adding more and more modifiers on top of everything, right? And every time you have something at the top, that's the one that's gonna override everything else underneath, right? So in the case of the noise, it's right there. This one is the inner eyebrows, that little modification I did right there in the middle, right? So let's say this one got a little bit too much, and you can actually use this slide, right? And just like blend them back, just slightly like that. So it's not like completely out of whack. And then you can keep it like that. So you have a ton of controls, you know, and then you can keep painting stuff and removing stuff. And then another thing that I forgot to mention is that you have stuff like, for example, the clump. Clump is very important too, you know, especially for when we are doing the eyelashes. The clump is going to help to actually bring them together pretty close. But you can use the clump actually to spread out stuff as well if you go negative. So for example, like if I add a modifier here, I can say clump. So by default, you're gonna see those little clumps like that, right? So it's like, it's pretty funny looking. But then if you go here, there is a setting here that says, let's see if I can find it, density. By default, you see like it's 1, and the slide is all the way up there. So you're gonna think like, oh, that's the maximum it goes, right? But no, if you keep cranking this one, let's say 10, right? You get much more than 100, get much more than that. So basically, like if I keep going down here, I'm gonna get those micro little clumps. So that's the kind of stuff I add, like for example, the eyelashes. I get like a very high number in here, just to make sure that the eyelashes, they are just like between like 2 or 3, they're gonna merge together instead of like a bunch of them merging together, like this, right? The low numbers, you get too many of them blending into a point. And then, like I said before, like if you use something negative, for example, the clumping here is at 1, right? If I keep going back in here, and now it's negative, they, instead of like getting together, they start spreading. And this one can be useful, for example, like for peach fuzz, you know, it's like, so it's not something that's too perfect. So I'm gonna go back here, let density, let's go higher. A little bit of clump in there, so it's not like something that they are totally separate from each other. You know, it's like some of them are gonna get together. So something like that. And then, and that's kind of it. You know, it's like for this kind of groom, I would obviously go and do some more fine tuning with all this stuff and add some sculpting layers in here to just like really pull them together and make sure that everything is nice and tidy. But that's kind of the gist of it. But the thing is, like, this is the default shader from Maya. So you're gonna see, like, if I click the top node, which is the eyebrows, if I go and scroll all the way down here, it says like hair physical shader. That's the default from Maya, right? So what we're gonna do first is to actually assign a decent shader, which is the Arnold shader. Has a very nice one. It's more like a physically accurate, right? This one, it says physical shader, but I never trusted it that much. So let's just go and find my, let's see. Where is it? Did I hide it somewhere? My hypershade? I'm not finding it. Oh, it's right here. Got a monitor. Haha. So if I click this one here, eyebrows, and I just do a graph, and then graph materials on select objects, now it's here. And this is a funny thing that happens sometimes, a little bit of a bug as well. Sometimes you assign it, and it doesn't disconnect this old one. It keeps it in there, so it doesn't assign it. But I'm gonna show you how to remove if that happens. So first thing you're gonna do, you're gonna go to Arnold shader, and then there is, instead of like the standard standard surface, we're gonna use the standard hair. So I'm gonna click that one, and I can name it. I can just say eyebrows. Actually, I'm gonna do like just like hair, because I'm gonna use a map to control the color of everything. So that's hair. And then now I'm gonna click this one, eyebrows, and I'm just gonna right click, assign material to viewport selection, right? And let's hope for the best. Let's see if yeah, it worked first time. So sometimes it doesn't disconnect. If it doesn't disconnect, then you have to select this, the last one, for example. For example, if this one was the hair physical shader that was selected right now, I would just click select in here and just press delete, and that would go away. And then you would basically select this one again and then assign the hair shader to it, and it should be connected. So you guys are free to ask questions if you want. You're like in the process here, but it's all good.
I have some questions.
Yeah.
I remember when I did another process that the guy, he creates some areas with the different UV sets in ZBrush, and he export like the areas for eyebrows, the area for the hair, and he got the entire head with the low version.
Yep.
To create with another UV set to create the pit fuzz. And I did some how to say the freelance stuff that works pretty well with the different kind of descriptions. Because when you have more than one description, for example, if you try to use dynamics for one of those and you don't want to use for the another one, sometimes this process that you have a bunch of layers with the sculpting options can broke completely the XGen. I tried so many times. You say, when you said that you have the love and hate with the software, I think is the relation is the best way to describe my feelings about, because I feel like sometimes the descriptions disappear, and you save the file with the description. And I really wanted to ask for you if in this process you have the same experience, that you working with the file, and the other day when you open the same file, the description disappears. You don't have any explanation about that.
No, I don't have it disappearing, but what I have is actually I save a file, and then when I reopen it, like the thickness of everything looks completely exploded. So it looks super thick, and then I have to rebuild them. And then like when I rebuild, it looks perfect in the shot again. And then I save the file. When I reopen it, it's exploded again.
Oh yeah. For example, I think if you don't save the file with the structure, because I've tried to make the archive, and the archive doesn't work because the how to say the procedurals map that the software use the full one to break up the flow of the hairs. For example, with the noise, when you save this files, I think it's randomic. The software decide where the map's going, and you don't have the way to make the path like archive with all the maps in this correct place. How did you solve that issues?
No, here's the thing. I'm not the hair specialist, and the thing is, like, I use XGen just for my portraits, right? And that's basically like everything about this class about the portraits. I'm not gonna say like it's like
in production, right?
Yeah. For example, like this is not production, right? And I mean, like we don't use this in production. We use the custom tools we have at ILM, and I don't even know how they work actually. But what I'm saying, like, this is for someone who wants to learn how to do those portraits. And the way that I'm doing stuff is the most simplified way I think you can find, instead of like plugging a lot of maps and stuff. But I mean, like, if you want to expand that, or it's like anyone listening now, if you want to expand that and look at some tutorials about XGen, you're going to find all kinds of different ways of doing stuff. It's like painting the mask that he was mentioning. I mentioned at the beginning, for example, like if you want to paint masks, if you have to have a separate UV set, right? Or a different mesh saved with one single UDIM. And then you can do a lot of stuff with that. But, for the purpose of the class, we're going to be just doing like using like the simplest possible way of doing stuff and getting the best results we can get with that.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you're a payman, I mean, like I see people, like there's a group on Facebook and they are like professionals using XGen in production. And it's, they have all kinds of workarounds for stuff. And are you part of that group?
I had problems. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out if I can find another software, like a Yeti or Ornatrix or.
Yeah.
But the way that you're working here is amazing. I will try to mimic the same.
Yeah, I mean, like it's just like if you're doing portraits, it's like it's simple and you can get a lot out of it. It's just like it's really cool. Now, if you're gonna involve like dynamics and how you're gonna make sure that the curves the guides are following, and then
alembic information. This is
alembic. Because there's a way, like he's mentioning alembic in the descriptions here. You can actually export your caches. So you can export alembic caches, and there are ways actually you can transfer the it's like the groom from one model to another one. There's a way you can actually export those to a different file, for example, like a separate file, and then you can actually recreate this entire structure I have in here just by selecting all of them. So for example, if I have eyebrows in here, if I do this, let's try. So for example, if I want to have a backup
to export the cache, right?
No, I don't need to export the cache. So for example, like if I click the eyebrow, we can just say description, preset, and the export.
Okay.
You can just say save. We're going to save first. And then let's make sure I have my scene saved before I do that. But
sure.
It's a good backup. So let's do this. So now you can just say, okay, let's search the folder in here. And there's scenes, it's fine. You can just say like eyebrows. Something like that. Oops. My Google is crying. Eyebrows 1. And then saving here. And then you can actually get like a viewport snapshot. Something like that. So it shows right there. And then you can just say export. Shouldn't take too long. I already did it. So I'm going to just save this one on top of what I had before. It's already saved. And then now, for example, like let's pretend this one wasn't here. I'm going to delete altogether. I don't know if the guide's going to work now because I don't know if he exports the guide as well, but let's try. Let's see if he recreates the entire system. So if I select the model itself, I can just go to description, preset, import now. And then you can search for that one. And the thing that I do here is switch both. So instead of like position based, I use UV based. And instead of rotate to align, I just use original orientations and I just click import.
Okay.
Let's see what happens, if it's going to create the guides or not, because I'm not sure.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So let's see. It's calculating. Oh, you brought everything. So let's see.
Oh, nice.
So let's see if the guides. Yeah, the guides are here too. So pretty nice. So Yeah, that's another way to do it, you know. At least you can have backups. So sometimes instead of like, saving everything at the same time, you can actually save for each one of them. You just click one of those descriptions, export just the eyebrows, export just the beard. And if you have a model that's shared geometry across the board with other models, you can always use the UV stuff and then just transfer the eyebrows all together to another model, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, man.
Yeah, no problem. So let's see. Let's open this one again fresh. Let's see if it's all saved in there. I hope it is. But at least we have the backup if we need to. And so let's do, yeah, it's all saved. Cool. So let's pretend this one is done now. And let's move on to the next thing that would be, obviously, this one's going to change a lot until I get to something like this, right? It's like, look at those eyebrows, man. Those are crazy looking eyebrows. Gonna have to basically eliminate most of it, but I did it for the purpose of showing you guys how I would approach like a regular kind of eyebrow. So I'm gonna just hide them for now. I don't need to see them. And I'm gonna just create the layer of peach fuzz. So the hair, for example, if you create the hair itself, we're gonna do this next Monday. And the hair itself, like the scalp, would be basically like, you know, it's like from forehead all the way to the back of the head and over the ears. That's about 90,000 to 150,000 follicles. But for the peach fuzz, I don't have the number because it's like, I mean, like we have across our entire body, right? But let's say if it's the entire face and head, and if I use a number like that one, that's like 150 just for that part, I would say like maybe like between 200 and 300,000 would be like the number of peach fuzz. I would say like around head and shoulders in here. So I'm gonna have to select some areas here first. And I think the best way to do that is to select, I have to avoid, for example, if I'm gonna add peach fuzz, the inside of the mouth, the eye sockets, and the ears, right? Like inside of the ear right there. And maybe like the bottom part in here. So I'm gonna try to select some of those areas. Let's see if I can do this from here. Let's click a few points like that. I can select just a few of them. Actually, let's do this with UV. So UV, let's just click a few of them. Let's go from maybe like from the inside. So let's get that bag in there like that. And just unselect this one, and then let's get the bottom part here. Just a few of them should do it. So let's see if I do something like from here. That I know there's a partition in there. And then the eye bags, let's see from the side, if I can select from here. So let's get the eye bag here. Not the eye bag, but the, you know, the socket. And then let's just deselect the outer parts in here. And maybe the ears, just that inner little part in there. So let's get that eardrum and that one. And just to select those little messy areas here. And we should have like basically like the stuff I'm gonna need, I think. So let's switch to the UVs. Go to Windows, Modeling Editor, and then UV Editor. And now I have them selected in there. Let's just press W just to go to Move Mode. And then I can just Control, right click, and then say to UV Shell. Actually, this one selected everything. What do I have? Oh, it's because I have this area selected. Okay, so let's do UV Shell. So now I picked all those areas. It's the under part. This one is the whole ear, so I don't need that. So I'm gonna deselect it. So now I should have just the stuff I need, which is like, yeah, all that stuff is basically, I'm not gonna grow any hair in those areas. So now I can just say Control F11. So you basically select the faces, and then I can just press Shift, right? And then with Shift, you just reverse the whole thing. So create an area like that. So now basically like this is the faces I'm gonna be using to create my peach fuzz. And obviously I have some lips in here. Maybe I can eliminate the lips first. Let's try that. Let's see. I can grow a little bit of that area. Let's see if I can find the lips here in my, or I can just like really shrink them at the end, but Would be nice to just have a clean, see, 12 lips around here. So let's see. Oops. Yeah, it would be nice if I had everything as edges at this point. Let's see. Let's see if it helps. That's edges. Let's double click this edge here. And a few of them here. Let's see how far I'm getting. Oh, that's good. So I can go even further. 3, 4 edges. Let's see the other side. Double click, a few of them. 5. Yeah, that's matching. Even one more. Or 2 more. Actually, around here is good. So one more here and one more there. And let's check the lower lips as well. Where is it? You can go from here. Let's see. Actually, I can use like a loop in here straight away. So let's do that and that, that, and go all the way across. Get this guy. I'm gonna move this away. It's hard to see what's going on. And let's get those guys too. So I don't need any of this selected for my hair. So let's see if that's good. Maybe this one too. Yeah. See, like those ones should be matching actually. It's a mess in here. This one would be matching the outer area. So this would have to be in the same line, but I mean, I'm sculpting basically like forcing my way in there. So not a problem, but it would be nice like to just have like a continuous line that would, you know, it's like match completely, but it's okay. And then here, let's just get some of those guys selected, just a few of them. And then I'm gonna do the same for the nostrils that I forgot. Just gonna get one on each side. So I'm gonna go again, press Control F12. So that's basically UV again. So basically to change selection, I don't know if you guys do it, it's like a Control F9, F10, F11, F12. So you go like from vertex to edge to face to UV. And then here I can go again and say Control, and then to UV shell. Oh, now I cannot do that, obviously, because I'm going to select the entire thing, but I can do manually here. Let's do this one is the nostril. This one is the back of the mouth. This one is a mistake. This one is a mistake. And this one here is the other nostril. Oh, and this stuff here, obviously, now because it transformed everything in edges, now I selected stuff I shouldn't. So like those guys have to go. Let's do this, this, and this one should have to go as well. Selection there. And let's see if we got everything we need. This one as well. No. So mouth, eardrums, back, that should be good. So let's just press Control F11 again to select the faces, Shift, open a little window, and now I have just the faces selected and nothing else in there, right? So those guys are all clear now. So let's do create another description now for the peach fuzz. So let's do that with create interactive groom splines. And now this one here is going to be the Vellus or peach fuzz. And then the number of it, I have a 62 here. It gives me a 132,000. So I'm going to increase this to 80. Even more than that, 100. It's a lot, but I gotta do this because I want to add like peach fuzz across the entire thing. And then for the length, I'm gonna use like a very small length that would be like 0.1. And then for the scale, it's gonna be very little, 0.04. And for the count should be only 8. Let's apply it. Do it. Did it do it? I don't see anything. Is it too small? Let's see.
I think it's because the width remains 0, Chris.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing, right? Like when you can control it later, but if you do right there, it's kind of like it doesn't show sometimes. You're right. So for example, like let's try that again with the 0.01, and then we can actually scale down later. So let's do it. Yeah, now I can see it. It's pretty big though, but so it's kind of like I think it's a fairly decent amount. We can actually tweak the stuff later, but you know, it's like I can go right here in my base, right? Like, and increase the multiplier or decrease it, right, to get more or less of that. I'm gonna keep at 1 for now because I think it's kind of okay. And then obviously you're gonna be the eyelids. I have to remove those guys as well because you know it's like the internal part here. I shouldn't have it, but it's okay. I can just shrink them pretty good. And so now we can do a little grooming here. So let's start with the sculpt, which is like the default sculpt, and just like click that one. I'm gonna add some direction first. So I'm gonna just do like use a big symmetrical brush, which again you can go to tool settings in here, and then you can tweak the symmetry in here the way you want. So it's world in X now, and then the intensity should be okay by default. So the size and the strength is like at 50%, and you can just start. Let's see, this guy here, this guy there. Oh, my mouse is acting funny. My tablet's acting funny. I think it got into this weird mode now. Holy smokes. Sometimes it gets locked. Let's see, let's try again. Yep, so weird. Come on, Maya. Yeah, the space bar stopped working. There you go. Let's see if it works now. Why? Ah!
If you dedicate more process for Maya, if you Control Alt Del and put more cores to try to help, because it's not cores, right? It's the virtual memory, right?
I'm not sure I have a ton of memory here. Yeah, it's I mean, like sometimes I have this little bug that happens. Let's see if inside of ZBrush is happening. Seems like it's fine, but I'm actually doing like I'm gonna reboot this Maya session here very quickly, just to make sure we're clear. But you know, it's like every time you start doing a lot of stuff in Maya, and especially if you're clicking stuff too fast, sometimes Maya locks you. Do you experience that as well? For example, like if you're spinning around a model, and all of a sudden you click something to select an edge or something, and you're in the middle of the spinning, it locks. It's like, what the hell? It's just like, yeah.
Did you pay your debits with the CG gods tomorrow or in this morning?
No.
Did you sacrifice the goat already?
No.
Oh, man. that's why.
Yeah, this freak. Oh man, but sure enough, they get the bill, right? Like every month they do the automatic debit in my account every month. But you know, it's like fix the stuff. No.
I'm kidding. Sorry.
It's okay. So it's loading. Still thinking about it. Maya's still thinking about it. Okay, let's close it when I can. Let's open that scene again. And let's see if things are fresh and smell fresh as well. Let's see. Because I want to do some grooming here, man. So let's see. Let's go straight to this guy. Let's see if it's not working. Oh, now it's working. Oh, there you go. It was Maya just like being funny. So now we can actually start like adding some direction, you know, it's like obviously get references if you need, and then see how those things, you know, it's like what's the direction of those speech fuzzes. Normally like they go this direction, you know, it's like they kind of start from here and then nose kind of goes down. But, you know, like just looking for some references. I would go down here. And then more toward, like a little bit more spiky down the nose in here. This area would keep the way it is. Then just like brush it down. And this, you can see like it's like 200,000 of them. And it's fairly interactive, you know, it's like everything you can actually pull. Obviously, my machine here is a good machine, but I don't think you have to have like a mega machine to do any of those, you know. Just like it's really impressive how interactive it is. So let's see. When it works, it's amazing, man. When it doesn't work, it drives you nuts. So I can grow my brush in here. And again, I'm not using that little feature to actually make me prevent the collision with the face, right? So I have to be careful. So that's why I'm doing from these angles here. So I turn like that so I can actually basically like brush it away from the skin very slightly in those angles, right? So basically like that. And at this point here, I don't have a lot of variation happening, right? Like everything is very spiky and pointy towards the normals. But I can actually play with again with the trusty with the how we call the noise, right? Like the noise, you can do a lot with it. You can use the I'm sorry. Let me see. This guy here, the sculpt. No. I'm talking about the clump. Yeah, you can use the clump and just use reverse so I can actually spread things out a little more. The thing about the clump is that it makes things very, very slow. If you have a ton of geometry like that, a ton of hairs like that, it can make things very slow. So I would use like carefully, but the noise definitely I would add description here. It's like a little modifier. So I'm gonna add the noise first. And you see like it already grew everything. It's kind of like a mess right now. But you can always go to the attribute editor. And the first thing you're gonna do here is just gonna bring the preserve length first all the way up. So they stay in the same length. And then you can just use the curvature, right? So the frequency here is pretty high right now. Get very scraggly, right? And then the magnitude as well. So I can actually play and get like something that looks a little bit more natural, but without being too crazy. And then, so now it's just like the length you're gonna have to add some variation, right? But for what we need right now, it looks good. So let's tweak the thickness of this entire thing. So you click the top node, and then remember I had to put like 0.01, otherwise it would not show because you would consider it 0.0. But now I can actually see it. I can actually go to 0.04, and it gets very thin, as you can tell, right? And then you can also add that little curvature. So I can actually bring this one down and spline. And then from that point on, I can just make it a little thicker. And then the tip's very thin. A little thicker and thin like that. So get this a little bit more organic little guys. Like that. If you need to go a little thinner, you can go like 0.03 here. Because those guys are very thin, you know, it's like you're not supposed to see them when you see like a light, right? It's basically like you're gonna see them like in angles like this, right? Like kind of like the tangent angles in there. You're gonna see them kind of like creating that little velvet effect. Actually, I added some inside of the nostrils as well. It's fine, not a problem. But and then some of them gonna be very, very short, and some of them gonna be a little longer. You're gonna see some longer ones, normally like around the ears, especially with like older guys. You're gonna see like longer ones in there. And then obviously when you get in this area here, if you start, for example, like just you know, how you call like styling them, I would style in the direction of the eyebrows, so they are actually prepared to blend with the eyebrows. If you need to add like a blend, you know, it's like you can grow them just to blend perfectly with the eyebrows. So for example, if you switch here your shading to let's say smooth shade with where is it, wireframe unshaded, like that, you can actually see them very clearly where they are, right? So and then I can actually play with this. Let's say the ears, if I want to grow them a little bit, I'm going to just add my trusty width length brush, and then I have symmetry on, so I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller by my brush, like by pressing B and then clicking and dragging. So I'm going to drag it in there. And let's say now I can actually go to my, I have my sculpting there. If you want to make things more interactive to sculpt, always turn off your noise if you have it on top of stuff, so you can actually go and just like sculpt stuff faster, and then you can turn it on again once you're done. So let's do that, and then the tool settings, let's see what we have. We have an increment very slowly. So I'm gonna get those guys bigger, and then some of them are gonna add some variation as well. We can actually use plug a noise modifier, and you can use that one to control the randomness of the length as well. So I'm just gonna add some length by hand in here, much longer in this area. And then sometimes in those areas here on the sides, lots of females actually, women have like a lot of peach fuzz that get pretty long around this area here, the beard, right? And some of them, depending on the testosterone, they're gonna get like actual beards, right? Like you have some women with actual beards, which is kind of interesting. But I'm just gonna add some of like length in the peach fuzz in here, just to add some more natural feeling to it. And because this stuff is gonna have to start blending into the other stuff. Obviously, if you're dealing with a guy who actually shaves constantly, the peach fuzz is probably gonna be shaved as well, right? So it's not like you're gonna have like a long peach fuzz in here. So let's bring back to the short ones, thinking clearly here. Let's bring back, so I don't need that blend. It's almost like, okay, he shaved recently, right? So we're gonna make it a little shorter here. It's fair. Shorter because you wanna deal with kind of like reality a little bit. It's a lot of fantasy here, but a little bit of reality. Make it shorter because this guy is constantly shaving. And then I can keep it longer in the area that's not the beard area, right? So I'm gonna keep it shorter in here. He's an older guy, but he shaves. And then I'm gonna keep it not much longer, but longer in his cheeks and other areas like that, which he doesn't shave. So I'm gonna basically like shave a little bit more here, a little bit shorter. Doing a little grooming. And obviously you can actually lock the minimum length here to something a little bit bigger. So let's try like 0.03, let's see if I can get it to not shrink too much. So let's see 0.03. Yeah, that looks more like a shaved thing now. So now basically like what I'm doing, I'm shrinking. It's still a little too little. Let's try 0.1. Yeah, okay. So I'm shrinking, but now it's not gonna be shorter than that. So it's still a little big. Let's try again, 0.05. And then shrink again, okay. Yeah, something like that. So now the ones that got too short is gonna pop out again because you're gonna get like a minimum. And again, like this is like it's peach fuzz. You're barely gonna see any of this stuff that I'm doing, you know, it's like against the light, but just like trying to pass the logic, you know, like if you shaved it, you basically like you're gonna shave the peach fuzz as well, right? So I'm just trying to pretend that I'm shaving his beard in here and leaving a little bit of peach fuzz behind. And then in this area here, then obviously you're gonna have more peach fuzz, right? Because there's no shaving involved. So let's go back here. And let's just go back to my model itself and look at those guys closely. And then I can even add some more thickness, not thickness, but length in those guys later. But let's see if we can add like a little bit of a variation in terms of sizes. So let's see if it's possible to do here with this. Let's try with scale taper. Let's try in the scale. So the scale is this one here, right? At 1, and then you can keep growing it, and you're gonna get like much longer right there, right? So in theory, if you plug something here like a noise, which we should experiment with, it should actually help with to break that. So let's try that. Let's click this one and see if we can add a noise modifier. And let's just crank this density, not density, which one? The frequency. And you can see there start like to create some variation in there already, right? I don't know if you can see it, but it's popping like that.
Chris.
Yes.
The cut modifier don't make something like that as well.
The cut modifier?
Yeah, when you use the modifier called cut. Don't have this because I used these things before, but I don't know if it's the same.
I never used this cut, to tell you the truth. Like, does it have something to do exactly that?
I think, yeah, I think it's a control for
length.
Yeah, for the size. Oh, how long is the every single one?
Let's try that. Let's see. So you would plug in the mask.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the amount in here. Okay, I can see the length of it going away. But let's try that. Like you said. Let's see if I have my which one is this one here? Let's just break this one and return to default. And let's try with the cut. It's a good way to learn here. So the amount. So that's the one that probably I guess I can plug right here in the amount as well. Yeah. Let's try
cut mode. You have the absolute. You have another option, right? Which one?
Relative, yeah.
Relative.
So this is by percentage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and this one is here the amount, right? So let's try to plug like a noise right here. Let's see what happens. So this one here didn't quite work. Let's see if I crank it. I think at the end of the day, I think it's gonna be a similar result.
Okay.
If I can get it to show, obviously, because right now here, like, my frequency is a little funky. But yeah, I think because like the noise controlling is going to be the same. So I'm guessing it's going to be a similar kind of thing, So I'm just going to remove it for now. But I promise I'm going to be experimenting with it. And if it works better, I'm definitely going to adopt it.
I think it works better when you have the not pitch for.
I see.
Yeah. Clamps or something like that.
So let's get this one. So get some variation there. And then let's do, let's see my amplitude. A bit towards dark. I can actually reverse it as well. And then frequency ratio, let's see if it changes too much. It has some variation. It could be a little bit more, but it definitely has some variation going on. And then the density, let's see. My color balance, maybe I can control with that as well. This guy is actually not working. Oh yeah, this one is working. Okay. But let's try with the color offset as well. If it doesn't work, I can just add an effect in here. I can use an invert and see if that one affects it better. It definitely has the effect. It's just like I wish it was a little bit stronger than what I have. It's just like the setting of my noise. If I can get the noise a little bit more contrasty, then I can get it to show better. But yeah, it's something to play with. Sometimes I play for a while, it's like until I find something that I like. But this one here is a good variation.
I think when you double click the noise and open, you can change the I'd say the tile of the noise. I don't know, and the contrast.
This one is actually.
Yeah, you're doing this.
Yeah, it's like, and then you have these other types in here as well, right? You have the purling noise and stuff like that, but the billow. But I think like the variations I wanted, I think I got some of them in there, and then some of them I can actually pick by hand and just add more. But I think like just to get some variation in there, I think is actually good. Let's see, this one got a little bit on the small side in this area. Maybe I can actually use my modifier to just grow them back. So let's try that. Let's see. Actually, this one here, it might actually, yeah, if I use this modifier, I have the impression that my sculpting is not going to affect it. So for example, like if I try to sculpt something here and grow it, I don't think it's going to grow. Let's try. Oh, it's actually working. Good. Because I think I tried in the past and didn't quite work. For some reason, this one is actually locking everything. But this one is actually working. Okay. So just going to interactively just add a little bit more length to them. And then obviously here, like I normally do like as a separate pass to do like the noise hair with a different modifier, right? Like a different description. But here you have the option, actually, if you want to do everything here, you could potentially just like make the hair thicker and then grow them. You could do everything the same if you wanted, but in my case, I'm gonna just keep separate just so I have more control. But let's just grow a little bit in there in the tip of the nose, but not much. And let's see what else. Actually, you see like the scale here is actually, it's eliminating too much of this stuff. I'm gonna try to crank it a little bit more again, because it's eliminating a lot of my hair everywhere. Let's bring this one up. So now I can see more. Let's see the ratio. Amplitude is not changing. Frequency ratio, that's not changing much either. Yeah, this one is the one actually changing something there. But yeah, I think I would actually do this stuff kind of manually, you know, it's like to add more variation. I think I'm gonna do kind of like in with the sculpting stuff instead of like relying too much on the map, because the noise here doesn't seem like it has enough ratio, frequency. Maybe like if it's a bigger number, let's see, 300. Yeah, it still is not affecting that much, you know. It's just like, for now, I'm just gonna eliminate this one altogether. And I'm just gonna play with the, you know, manually actually sculpting this stuff and adding more volume if I need to. And then maybe like eventually just like making the brush very tiny like that, and then picking a few of them and just like really, you know, tweaking the length of it. So for example, if I want to pick one here, let's get a little bigger. And let's set up a scale of, let's see, this guy. And then this guy, and then attributes. Let's make it like a minimum length. And then maximum length, let's see if I can do like a very abrupt version of it. Yeah, something like that. So I would pick a few of them, you know, just like roll them like that, just because it's to break silhouette. Those are actually doubles. I can actually just get one. If I do very carefully, I can just pick like one at a time, you know, and just break the silhouette. Because like I said, those guys, you're not gonna see them until you turn all the way. And then if I can pick like a few of them just to be the longer ones, and then later I can actually experiment with that cut one and see if that one works better. But yeah, manually I can just pick a few of them and just make it longer, just for variation. But in this case here, let's just keep going with adding the noise again. So now I have like some longer ones in there. Let's get another one here, make it a little longer. You see, like with the noise, everything gets slower. So I'm gonna turn it off, make it longer in there. And those should actually help with just breaking the silhouette. Get that one too, turn it around a little bit. Another one right there. And then turn on the noise. Those got very long in there. It's okay. Can tweak it. But that's basically like the way I add the peach fuzz. And then now if you have the peach fuzz plus the eyebrows, then you can actually start blending things. Like if that's the case, you would do, for example, like I would turn off the noise. And then around this area here, I would use my trusty length brush. And would get make sure that you have symmetry on. And I would just like roll those guys. The ones close to the eyebrows. That. And then you start actually styling them to blend together. So get this guy here. And then at the end, you're gonna see it's just gonna be like a tiny little effect, right? Like from when the light hits in a certain angle, you're gonna see those guys actually blending. But yeah, you have to keep them very thin, you know? It's like sometimes it gets too thick. In this case here, you got too thick, you know? It's like especially around the nose in there. This stuff, you should be barely visible, and it turned out too strong. But that one is in my list of fixes for, you know, when I have the time, which is not going to be anytime soon. I have to finish.
Chris.
Yes.
I saw here in the XGen shelf, you were using the second half for the interactive groom, right?
For the second half, what you mean? Yes, the second half.
Yeah,
yes, yeah, definitely.
What is the difference between the first half and the second half?
Well, the first half, it's basically like the regular XGen, the one that you, it's just like when you go for XGen, there's two ways of creating it, with the interactive, and there's another one that's basically like, it's more like it's more like technical, I would say, because you have like parameters and equations you can add to create like differences and stuff, like variations for the length of the hair that I was just trying to do with maps just now. You can do that with expressions and everything. So it's more technical than artistical, you know, I think, artistic. So so that first half is basically like, it's all the tools that you use for that other XGen mode, you know. So
the second one is faster for us, right?
Yeah, so this one here is all interactive, and this part here is actually just the XGen, the regular XGen. So if you're using interactive, you're only going to use the second half here for sure.
Oh, okay, okay. Thanks,
yeah.
Therese.
No problem. Yeah, that takes care of it. And then now the last one we can do here, since we have 15 minutes, we still can do some nose hair. So let's do that by selecting those faces. So I'm gonna get this one. Just select one. Let's do it with the UVs. So UVs. I'm actually right-clicking, right? And then select UV. And I click this one, then going to my window, modeling, UV editor. And then just like right-click to shell. So I get, those are the nostrils actually. I thought those were the nostrils in here, but I think those ones are actually the eardrums that I had before. So now I can just press Control F11 to switch to polygons. And now we can grow some hair in there. So I'm gonna add another Create Interactive Groom. And I have no idea how many we have, but I would say, if we have to guess, maybe like, I don't know, between 300 and 400 in each one. Something like that. But let's try nostril hair. And let's try like 20. That's too little, so let's try 30. 300 for both. A little more. 40. Okay. So length, let's do longer. So let's try 0. If the eyebrows were 1, I would say maybe like 0.6 or 7, something like that. And then the CV counts, I would do like 16 here. And then we can actually make some of those much shorter. But that's about that. So let's just hide this, just keep those guys in place. And at the end of the day, what I'm gonna do here, I tried this in my last model, and it worked very fine, very decently, was to actually have the same hair shader for everything, including the peach fuzz and everything. Because I'm actually controlling the thickness, obviously, with the thickness in those parameters in here, but the color I'm actually controlling with the map. So if I have my melanin set, like for example, like to a kind of like a noisy color, I can actually get some of those to look slightly dark, and some of them look more like blonde and whitish, right? So most of them are going to be probably like on that side, like more whitish. But let's get to the eyebrows. I'm going to just frame it here, and I'm just going to select the Vellus and the nostril as well, the nostril hair. I'm just going to assign the same shader. So now they all have the same black shader in here, so it's easy for me to control later. And then nostril hair, let's just do some styling here. First thing you're going to do is going to be a little bit of the scale. I'm going to bring this down slightly, especially in this area here. Actually, those ones can almost like be gone. Those the very outside ones here. And then the other ones, I can actually just bring them up. And the noise is going to be my friend here again. Let's add a little bit of direction. bring it outside slightly. And then you can do some trimming as well. You can use some trim, bring some more like a little curvature to them. And I can trim those ones that are popping out too much. So now I can just get to this, to the cut one, the cut brush that I didn't use just yet. So we can go to cut. And then the cut works like this. See, like I can select, it turns green when I'm selecting them. If you just click like that, you should actually cut it off. Almost like a real life kind of trimmer, right? You just like go to the hair. And obviously, depending on the angle, sometimes you cannot catch them completely. And sometimes depending on the type of tool that you're using, sometimes it's because you're selecting volume. In this case, this is screen, which should not give me the problem, but still gives me the problem. Sometimes some of those tools, like I said, they're a little buggy. Sometimes you touch one of them, like this one is not doing it, and then you change the angle slightly, and then all of a sudden you can cut them again. And then those ones are, you know, starting to actually penetrate in there, so I'm just gonna bring them out a little bit. And then add some noise. Like I said, noise is your friend every time. Those guys out. Little direction in there. Then you can smooth things out. You have this brush here that goes from smooth tool, right? And if you use like too strongly, it's going to create some artifacts sometimes. But if you just like use with a very low intensity, it should smooth out pretty good. I'm gonna get those guys out, and then maybe make those guys here very thin, and those ones I'm gonna just bring outside of the little hole that it's starting to intersect. And those guys here are gonna make them very, very thin. So let's go to this one, width, and then let's try that, just blend them out. In the past, I would constantly use the density brush. But like I said, after many, you know, it's like nights of torture with that thing, give me all kinds of different crashes. I just like, you know what? The entire thing's gonna be covered in peach fuzz anyway. So that's what I'm gonna do from now on. So sometimes I just like completely shrink them into something like super short or cut it all together. For example, you can use the cut tool and you can set like the minimum remaining length to like 0.01. So when you cut those things, they basically like they go away altogether, you know. So you can do that as well. Unless you're really trying to save some some polygons in there, which is not my case here. I'm actually going to town with everything. Those ones, I'm having a hard time selecting them right now. Like those guys here popping out. And it doesn't happen with all the tools, but sometimes you have to change angles, you know, go orbit around. And it wasn't supposed to happen when you have screen selected. When you have volume, it happens all the time because it's like, it's based on the geometry, right? Some stuff is behind, sometimes it doesn't. But in this case here, it shouldn't work like that, but anyway. So now let's add some noise, because noise is good every time. So let's do nostril, hair, and then create, oh, actually, sorry. Add modifier, noise. It's gonna be a mass at first. Actually, it didn't create a mass. I wonder why. Because it was already a little messy. Frequency, maybe too much. Let's see, something like that's a little more. And that's a lot of hair too. Another thing I can control is actually the amount, right? At any time, if you feel like, okay, I added too much, you can go to the top node, go to the base, and then you can just like bring the density lower. So let's say like 0.6. So now, yeah, it's a bit, I would crank a little bit more, maybe like 0.8, something like that. And then try, of course, like to trim some of them. Like these guys here are popping out pretty good. Let's see if I can catch them from this angle. Yes. So you see, like it started to do some funny things in there. It's like start to break a little bit, kind of like turning into like a weird curvature, right? So sometimes the best thing you can do is to actually rebuild them. So if you go to the base, you go all the way down here, just say rebuild, and then they get nice and straight again. So every time you get into trouble, like just rebuild stuff, you know. If it's getting too funny, just rebuild and they turn nice and clean. Especially like if you have like too much noise stuff sometimes. So like this tip in here just got this weird bend. Now let's see what happens when I rebuild it. See it nice and straight. And let's see, yeah. And then the length, obviously, you can control with your scale as well. So if you have your, let's see, scale right here. Let's see, scale. You can bring it out and in again. And then I can control a little bit of that and then do a little trimming at the end. I think at 1 was good, actually. Let's do 1. And maybe just like do a little bit more of a, tuck everything in with the regular brush in here. Let's just sculpt with it. Yeah, that looks kind of good. And again, like the hair that I just cut, right? Like because I did some trimming in there, it's kind of like nice that you have like the little square ends, right? Instead of something that's more organic like this, it's just like it grows and grows and just like becomes this little a fine tip. Those guys here actually like having a little bit thicker, and then it's kind of like, especially those ones trimmed at the ends, it looks a little bit nicer like that. I'm still getting like intersections and stuff, but I think like for what I wanted to cover today, I think that's a good start for you guys. You know, it's like if you want to do some grooming over the weekend or do some tests, you know. We didn't have a lot of crashes happening today, thankfully. Just that one that actually stopped working, and I had to reboot my Maya. But other than that, we got like some hair, eyebrows covered, peach fuzz, and then the nostril hair. And then on Monday, we're going to be doing like the actual hair, but we're going to start with the eyelashes. And the eyelashes, I used to do them in geometry. In my previous portraits, I would do it like geometry. I had like my little set of polygons. I would just like, you know, move them around and scale and turn it around, everything manually, placed manually. But the last one I used was for a stand, and it turned out very nice with XGen. You know, XGen created a very nice kind of like the clumps actually created a very nice effect. And a lot of stuff I had to do manually, obviously, select like by hand, like one by one, freeze a couple of them like every other one, and then kind of like restyle manually some of them to create a little bit more of a natural look. It's at the end of the day, it's all about how much time you're gonna put to create like more natural forms into everything, right? If you expect the software to do everything for you, you're kind of screwed, because the software has a lot of potential in there, a lot of stuff you can do with it. But automatic stuff, sometimes it's not like the most natural stuff, you know, unless you get some very nice, you know, it's like randomizers, and then you can help you with that. But like the noise, for example. But most of the time, if you want to add like something that's a little bit more custom, right, like a little longer hair here or there, there's no way for you to tell the software other than either painting a very specific mask to grow the hair in that specific spot, or just going there and just picking one. For example, like if I wanted to do like some random ones here, I would probably get this the freeze tool and make it very tiny brush like that. And I would, for example, go, let's say like this guy here, freeze, just like example here, right? Freeze. And then I have those guys frozen now. So now I can go, for example, to my grow by length brush. Just make my brush very big like that. And I can just say invert frozen effect. So I'm gonna click that little box. So everything I sculpt now is gonna be actually affecting just the other stuff, right? And now if I do this, you're gonna see those blue ones there growing a lot, just the ones I picked, right? So those are the variations I'm looking for right there. Very well controlled, right? Like, I mean, with the map and with the noise, you would give me a ballpark. But if I want something like this, for example, the ears and some other areas, I would do that like that, you know, just pick a few of them like manually And those ones get super big in here. Let's just shrink them again. Because I keep demoing stuff and not paying too much attention. So I'm gonna just shrink them again a little bit. There you go. Yeah, so I think that's kind of like what I had for you guys today. We're kind of like right on time. But if you guys have any other questions, anything I can help with this stuff I just mentioned today, like I said, I mean, like it's not like a production kind of thing that I ever tested. I'm not a groomer at ILM. I'm actually a modeler. But this is the kind of stuff that helps me, you know, it's like to create those portraits. And you can see the results, you know, it's like the results look very nice. And it's super simple to use if you're an artist. Because sometimes like a lot of tools, they're super technical. But this one is, although it's technical, it's much more artistic, you know. I really like the way it works because you can actually paint length and paint thickness and all this stuff and create all those blends like beautifully if you want. Yeah, I'm gonna be adding a lot of hair in here too in this area. But anyway, so I think that's it for today, guys. And next week is actually our last week, but here's the program for next week. It's gonna be grooming the actual hair, and then the eyelashes. It's gonna be on Monday, and then on Tuesday, I think what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna separate like Tuesday to do like a overall anything goes. Basically, like if you guys have any questions about something that we have in a very hard time, something that we didn't explore multiple times already, we can just take that day to actually go and do like mini tutorials. I can just, if you have some, for example, like something you saw in one of my previous models and you wonder how I did it or whatever, I can just open any scene you want me to open and just go through that. I'm gonna also update you guys on the shaders. Once after this weekend, for example, I'm gonna be painting, you know, it's like gonna have a lot of stuff painted, like the skin color is gonna change. I might have to tweak my skin shader as well. And then if I do any updates in the shaders themselves, on Tuesday, I can actually update you guys, like break them up again, and then show you my settings so you can actually copy. And that's about it. So, and then between Wednesday and Thursday, it's just like fine tuning stuff. And on Thursday is probably going to be the last day that we're going to be doing a lot of sculpting with clay, things like that. I'm going to be showing some of that work that I do. Let's see, like something like this oracle. Let's see, this guy here, the oracle. Yeah, this type of renders here that I do for fun. And I actually trick a lot of people thinking that it's actually clay. For the past class, what I did, it was actually just like showing them my settings, you know, how I actually created those brushes, how they look like when I apply them to a plane, so we can actually copy and try to, you know, it's like duplicate my effect, and then how I actually sculpt stuff. The last one actually on Thursday, I actually got my stand model and I basically like transformed him into a clay sculpture and then just sculpted, you know. It's kind of like it's a cool way to present your work. For example, like I have this series of works that is just like those realistic portraits that takes me like 2 months to do each one, right? And it's not even, none of them are finished yet. But then I have this other series of clay portraits that are just as fun to do. And those ones I do normally like in 1 or 2 nights, right? And then just like flush them and make them look like sculptures just to trick people. And it's very effective. So I'm going to be showing some of that next week as well. So thank you so much, guys. I see you on the you know, Facebook group and also on Monday. So I hope you guys have a lot of stuff covered this week that you can actually experiment with over the weekend. You have like you know, it's like texturing. You got some grooming going on right now. We had you know, it's like the eye positioning and all that stuff we spoke about. There's the eye sculpting. There's the eye shaders. There's plenty for you guys to play with if you have the time. I hope you do. So.
Okay. Take care, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Have a great one, guys.
That's good.
You too. Bye-bye. Take some rest.
No problem.